Hello, I am Pastor Horace Douty in Lexington, Virginia, and each Sunday I bring you by way of YouTube a Bible meditation. And I urge you, if you enjoy these meditations, subscribe to Horace Douty, D-O-U-T-Y, YouTube, and share these meditations with your family and your friends. Thank you. Today, the second Sunday after Easter, the title of the meditation is, "I'm going fishing," said Peter. Those disciples, for a while, were filled with some hope. A few days earlier, they had witnessed the worst nightmare possible. The horror had made them run like scared rabbits. Their leader was crucified and dead. But things changed. Women had found the tomb empty. The shining angel had said, "Jesus is not here. Tell the disciples he will meet them in Galilee." And so those women went immediately in the radiant hope of seeing their master alive, and the disciples went to Galilee just as they had been instructed. There, the days went by, and Jesus did not come. Each evening, those disciples told themselves, he'll probably come tomorrow. Surely, he will appear. But tomorrow came. The sunshine lit the water. Smoke rose from the village chimneys. People went about their business, yet nobody came in sight, having the scars of the nails upon him. Their thoughts were full of him, which made it harder. They remembered earlier days when life was good, when there was no shadow of a cross. Here, in the rural solitude, life flowed on as usual. Most of those villagers had not even heard about the crucifixion way over there in Jerusalem. These restless disciples felt their hopes grow dim. Their hearts sank lower with every passing day. You know the feeling. You have times when the Lord seems far away. Your prayers feel useless. The Bible loses its vitality. Your tears lie close to the surface. You're not the first. Look at those despairing disciples. Their story should be a comfort to you. In their misery, they did not realize that Jesus was still near, somehow watching them. Peter could no longer tolerate the waiting, and that final evening he burst out, "I'm going fishing." Now, going fishing for Peter does not mean what you may think it means. A disciple heading toward a mountain stream with his fly rod. No, that's wrong. Peter was a commercial fisherman. He was going back to work. His heavy boat lay there on the beach where he had left it months ago, fully equipped. It was time to go back to the real world, where a man could test his muscles against the spray and the ropes. The rest of them went with him. Nothing better to do. In Peter's boat, they pushed off and spent that night sweeping the nets through the sea. They thought they were alone, but all the time, over there on the distant beach was the master they thought they had lost. Jesus watched them. He knew that the future of the world was in that boat. In an agony of affection, he kept back. They would need to shift and survive without him. Think about it. If Jesus had stayed with those disciples, they would never have spread the gospel across the world. They would have waited for him to do it. Now, don't misjudge the Lord. When he seems so far away, when your net is empty and your heart is heavy, he is watching and loving you. He may be training you, conditioning you, just as he was doing that night. Out of despair, those men in that boat came into full manhood. Through them the church was born. And you are the recipients of their labor. The story suggests that God may seem far off, but he still is there. Your work may keep you going. For Peter, idleness was torture. He was not a scholar. There were many things he could not do. He was not a farmer, not a herdsman, but one thing he knew how to do, and to do well. He could spread the nets and haul in fish. And that's what he went back to Galilee expecting to do, resume the life of a fisherman. And he thought he was going to be reunited with the Lord that he loved. Yet, when it did not happen, Peter knew he had work to do, and he resolved to do it. His aching heart remembered too clearly the crowing of a rooster that morning, after he had, with an oath, denied being a friend of Jesus, standing there in the shackles. But here we see Peter at his best. Although waiting to see his Lord again, he did not stand idle. With quiet resolution, he went back to work. Don't miss the lesson. There is never a time when you cannot offer some useful service, maybe small. To respond in another's time of need is difficult enough when the sun is shining and the birds are singing and your heart is light. But it is difficult in the black of night. But Peter pulled it off that night. Despite his anxiety and his heavy heart, those unhappy men leaned into the labor, toiling all night. And by dawn, their common effort proved to be for them nothing. There's something heroic in their persistence. Time after time, those nets were cast, the heavy ropes were drawn, and the nets came up empty. They worked on while the lights on shore winked out, and only the nighthawks kept them company. And at dawn, they were still at it, bone-weary, disappointed. They had come to Galilee to meet a man. He was not there. Then they set out to catch fish, and the fish were not there. Nothing was working. They were failures at everything until they heard a distant voice shouting instructions. Boys, cast your nets on the other side of the boat. They did. And they hauled in a record load. The Bible gives us details, and this, to me, is a curiosity. After they recognized that this is Jesus on the beach with breakfast waiting, Peter walked away from his Lord to count fish. He was a fisherman. And one by one he counted 153 fish while his Lord is standing there. Jesus did not come back to those men while they were idly waiting. He came after their night of weary, ordinary labor. It may be the same for you. You will not always remain on the mountaintop. You will not feel like singing all the time. You may spend days when no one applauds or appreciates what you do. And when such unpromising times come, remember this story and take heart. Find a task, small or large, and get on with it. Don't dwell on your failures. Poor Peter knew his guilt. His sin was ever before him. He had failed his Lord far more dramatically than you have or ever will. And through strenuous physical labor, Peter was able to set aside the misery of the past. He toiled all night until finally there came the morning light. On a nearby shore stood Jesus, his master and his Lord. And don't you forget that last promise that Jesus made to Peter and to you. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the ages. Amen. God bless you.